Every single day, China needs over 10 million barrels of crude oil just to keep its factories running, its cities lit, and its economy moving. That oil does not come from inside China. It comes from the Middle East and Africa, traveling thousands of kilometers by sea. And for years, almost 80% of it had to squeeze through a single passage just 2.7 kilometers wide. That passage is the Strait of Malacca, and China does not control it. The strait sits between Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. The United States Navy maintains a strong presence in the region. If something goes wrong there, a naval blockade, a military conflict, even a major accident, hundreds of millions of barrels stop moving almost immediately. China's factories slow down. Its cities feel it. Its entire economy takes a hit. This is what analysts call the Malacca dilemma. The world's second largest economy, dependent on a single narrow choke point it cannot secure. So what do you do when most of your energy supply runs through a passage you do not control? China's answer was to stop using it. Instead, China built a completely different route. One that starts on the coast of another country, cuts across mountains and remote terrain, and delivers oil directly into southwest China, without touching the Strait of Malacca at all. A pipeline across an entire country. The system is called the China-Myanmar Pipeline, developed primarily by China National Petroleum Corporation. The concept on paper is simple. Bring oil and gas to the western coast of Myanmar, unload it there, and move it overland straight into China. The starting point is Kyaukphyu Port on the Bay of Bengal. From there, two parallel pipelines run northeast across all of Myanmar and enter China's Yunnan province, eventually reaching the city of Kunming. Two separate systems, built side by side. The first is a natural gas pipeline, operational since 2013, carrying gas from offshore Bay of Bengal fields. The second is a crude oil pipeline, which started operating in 2017, the one specifically designed to reduce Malacca dependency. The numbers behind this system are significant. The Myanmar section alone stretches 770 kilometers. Connect that to China's internal distribution network, and the total system runs over 2,500 kilometers, feeding directly into refineries deep inside the country. The crude oil pipeline can move 440,000 barrels per day. The gas pipeline adds a capacity of roughly 12 billion cubic meters per year. Why this was not simple? A pipeline crossing an entire country sounds straightforward. The execution was anything but. The route cuts through mountains, dense forests, and remote regions where basic infrastructure barely existed before construction began. In many areas, workers had to build access roads first, just to bring equipment in. Then came the technical challenge of maintaining stable pressure across hundreds of kilometers of varying elevation, changing temperatures, and shifting terrain, from coastal lowlands to highland mountain ranges. Pumping stations, compressor stations, storage terminals, and continuous monitoring systems all had to be built from scratch across some of the most difficult geography in Southeast Asia. Then there is the geopolitical complexity. Myanmar is not the most stable environment for a project of this scale. The pipeline runs through regions that have faced ongoing conflict and security challenges. Pipelines are fixed assets. Unlike ships, you cannot reroute them. If something disrupts the line, whether political instability, local sabotage, or a technical failure in a remote section, the flow stops immediately. So while this pipeline avoids one vulnerability, it introduces others. China understood that from the beginning. That is why it never treated this as the complete solution. The bigger picture, multiple routes, no single point of failure, the Myanmar pipeline, is one piece of a much larger strategy built around a single idea. No single route should ever be able to control China's energy supply. To the northwest, China built one of the largest overland energy corridors in the world. Gas pipelines from Turkmenistan run through Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan before entering China's Xinjiang region. Known as Lines A, B, and C, these pipelines together deliver around 55 billion cubic meters of gas per year. A planned Line D expansion could push that total past 80 billion cubic meters annually, from this single corridor alone. There is also an oil pipeline from Kazakhstan stretching over 2,200 kilometers directly into China, crude oil moving entirely overland, bypassing every maritime choke point completely. To the north, China connected to Russia through the Power of Siberia pipeline, over 3,000 kilometers long, designed to supply up to 38 billion cubic meters of gas per year at full capacity. It started flowing in 2019 and is still ramping up. A second route, Power of Siberia 2, is in planning stages and could add another 50 billion cubic meters annually if completed. To the south, China has invested heavily in Pakistan's Gwadar port under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. The logic mirrors Myanmar: bring oil in by sea, move it inland by land. But the challenge here is significantly larger. The distance from Gwadar to China's Xinjiang region exceeds 3,000 kilometers, much of it through high-altitude terrain, including sections of the Karakoram mountain range. Progress on a full-scale pipeline has been slower because of it. Inside China, all of these external routes connect into a domestic network of over 100,000 kilometers of oil and gas pipelines. This internal system links coastal import terminals, inland refineries, and industrial zones across the entire country. If more gas arrives from Central Asia, it gets redirected east. If more oil enters through Myanmar, it moves north or further inland. Every route feeds into every other route. The whole system operates as one integrated network. What this actually changes. Now compare where China started to where it stands today. At its worst point, close to 80% of China's oil imports pass through a single 2.7-kilometer wide strait that China did not control. One disruption, one bad decision by another navy, one major accident, and millions of barrels per day stop moving. Today, that exposure looks very different. Central Asian pipelines deliver tens of billions of cubic meters of gas annually. Russia feeds another 38 billion cubic meters through Siberia. Kazakhstan sends crude overland. Myanmar bypasses Malacca entirely for hundreds of thousands of barrels per day. And a 100,000-kilometer domestic network distributes everything across the country. The Myanmar pipeline on its own carries less than 5% of China's total oil imports. That number sounds small. But 5% of 10 million barrels per day is still 440,000 barrels every single day. That no longer depends on the Strait of Malacca. And that is just one route. This is the real strategy. China is not trying to replace the Strait of Malacca. It is making sure the strait is no longer the only option. When you spread your supply across 6 different corridors, sea routes, overland pipelines, northern gas lines, and southwestern bypass routes, no single point can collapse the system. The Malacca dilemma was a real vulnerability. China spent 2 decades building its way out of it. Now the question is yours. Is building multiple smaller routes genuinely safer than relying on one major global corridor? Or does spreading supply across unstable countries like Myanmar just move the risk somewhere else? Drop your answer in the comments. Subscribe and hit the bell, next one is already coming.